Now, how do we know that a policy is a good policy or a public policy is a good public policy? There are some indicators, and I want us to look at a few of these indicators. First of all, if the policy is futuristic, it is a feature that the policy is a good policy. A futuristic policy means that it looks beyond the now. So if the policy is being developed, it does not look within the short term, but it looks in the long term, the future. How so if we're doing this in 3 years' time, when the population of Ghana is at this level, how will that affect this policy? Then they put things in place in the policy to handle these anticipated things in the future. So these predictions, all of these things show that the policy is a good policy. It is futuristic. Because if it doesn't function like that, it means that very soon the policy can become outmoded or archaic. But if it covers for the future, then you know that this policy can be in place for quite a long time. Now, another feature of a good policy is that it is outward and inward looking. And when we say it is outward and inward looking, in as much as when you're developing a policy, you have to look at the region that you're developing the policy for. You have to look at the nation you're developing the policy for and the intricacies of that nation. Then you develop a policy. So you are inward looking. However, however, there is also the need for the policy to look outward because we are not living in a vacuum. We say that it is in Akan, they say nipa nya be na ne ho aso ne ho so. And in English, we say man is not a palm tree that is self-sufficient. So we are trying to say that the palm tree has a lot of benefits. You can get palm wine, you can get your akokono from it, you can get fan or papa from it, you can make your palm nut soup. There are so many things you can use the palm nut tree for, the palm tree for. So we say it is self-sufficient, but man or human beings, we are not self-sufficient. We need others, and others also influence what we do. So we're saying that a policy must be outward looking as well. Look at your environment. If you're in Ghana, look at what is happening in Nigeria, look at what is happening in Togo, look at what's happening in Cameroon and South Africa and Egypt. You're being outward looking. They are in your region, and things that happen to you or happen to them are likely to happen to you as well. So you learn from them. So, okay, Rwanda implemented this thing on plastic pollution, and this is the feedback, and this is how it is rolling out. This is what's happening. Okay, what can we learn from it? So, these things, outward looking, inward looking. So, you're not only looking outside, but also looking at you, how things are in your country, and how the outward and inward effects can be represented in your policy, then we say it is a good policy. A good policy must also be innovative. When we say it's innovative, we are saying that it can challenge or question established ways of dealing with things. So the policy does not only do things, oh, this is how things have always been done, so the policy says this is how it should continue being done. No, the policy should show innovation. So even though this is how things have been done, the policy comes and then saying this is how we're going to go about things now. Now we are going to use AI. Now we are going to, then you see that this policy is being innovative, yeah, or it is questioning established ways of dealing with things. So a policy says that, let's say a policy says when Ghana's cocoa is harvested, it should be transported by, let's say, trucks to certain regions. And then the policy comes and it says, why are we not using railways rather? So the railways that exist, let us revamp them and then use them to transport this or that. So this is just an example of how innovative a policy may be, depending on what the policy is looking at achieving. But basically, what we are saying is that it should change or establish the established ways of dealing with things. The policy should show some sort of setting itself apart, because new ideas and creative ideas are always welcome, and we can only develop when we encourage new and creative ideas in our policies moving forward. Policies must also be evidence based. It must not be based on guesswork. If a policy says we are distributing this to this region, it should not be because somebody feels, oh, then this region must need it and that is why we have to send it there. It must be based on evidence or research or data, existing research showing that this is needed here, that must be done. Then we can also see that, oh, this policy is a good policy. This policy is a good policy. Now, the policy must also be inclusive. Take, for instance, when we say inclusivity, remember that the country or every nation has various kinds of individuals in there. So a policy must account for all the kinds of people in a country. So, for instance, if the national television station has a policy on language, they would consider, even though we're speaking, what if the people watching, some cannot hear us? How do we go about letting them know what it is that we are saying? Then let us include sign language, you see, so that people who cannot hear can see the sign language, and then they will know what it is that we are talking about. So we say that, oh, this policy is an inclusive policy. Buildings, when you're putting up high rise buildings, I know the building code says, I think to a certain level, I think it's if it is 3 story or 4 story at least, there must be an elevator in there, and there must be access, wheelchair access. So all of these things show inclusivity. So when policies have been put together and they show one way or the other that they are contemplating and considering all manner of people, then we say that this policy is an inclusive policy. And then finally, another feature of a good public policy is that it is communicative. It is communicative. Now, when a policy is implemented or it is being put together, one question that the policymakers must ask themselves is, how do we let people know about this policy? How do we let people know what is expected of them with regards to this policy? Because many a time, policies are developed, but the people in the nation either do not even know there's such a policy existing, or they do not understand the policy and how it works. And that is a function of the absence of communication. So, going back to the National Public Policy Formulation Guidelines, you would realize that one of the steps that the policy indicates must be included in policy formulation is the communicative plan. And they insist in the policy that there has to be a communication person who heads or who leads the team when it comes to how the policy is going to be communicated across the country. Across the country. So, if you want to know features of a good policy, it must be communicative, it must be inclusive, it must be innovative, evidence based, futuristic, outward and inward looking. When we see these features, then we know that the policy is a good public policy.